In this video series, I'm going to take you through step by step how to grow your Upwork profile from $0 or nothing to 6 figures and beyond. I'll cover everything from how to set up your profile completely from scratch, how to apply and win jobs, how to actually handle that sales call, and how to actually manage a pipeline of work and grow your hourly rate rapidly. If you don't know who I am, my name's Adam, and I started freelancing on Upwork in 2021. I'm 23 years old, I'm from Sydney, Australia, and I started my freelancing journey 4 years ago in the heat of COVID. In that time, I've grown my profile from $0 earned to over 80,000 US dollars earned and over 50 projects delivered for my clients with a 100% job success score. In addition to that, last December, I decided to transition from a freelancer to an agency, and I've grown a global no-code software development agency from 0 to 60 projects and 1 to 6 developers in the last 10 months alone. Aside from the achievements, I'm a genuine no-code software development enthusiast, and I'm obsessed with AI, so I love being in this space and being at the tip of the iceberg in this new, really exciting, growing sector of the market. The objective of this video is to compile everything I've learned on my journey over the last 4 years into some quick and easy to break down steps. And I can almost guarantee you that if you follow these correctly and you actually take the tips on board, you're going to save yourself a lot of headache, a lot of mistakes, and it will give you the foundation to build a successful freelancing career in whatever niche that you would like. Before I jump into the technicalities of everything, I want to quickly touch on what it actually takes to become a freelancer. Obviously, freelancing is not for everybody and it's definitely difficult. So what I want to do is quickly explain some of the personal traits and things that I think successful freelancers tend to have. Number one is resilience. And if you're just starting out, you're going to know this one personally because there's a lot of rejection. There's a lot of hard times, late nights trying to deliver projects. You can get unhappy clients. Managing your own business in general and your own freelance operations tends to be pretty stressful and unpredictable. So you really need to have the kind of characteristics to get punched in the face a lot of times, get rejected a lot of times, but to push through and focus on delivering quality content and improving your skills. And I can promise you that eventually you will come out the other side, but sometimes it's going to feel like the entire world is breaking down on top of you. Next up is communication skills. So you not only deliver work, but you also manage the client and you convey solutions, but also what you're currently working on with the client. It's really important that you can communicate effectively. And so what that means traditionally in the freelancing space is being able to turn your camera on, being able to talk confidently, being able to explain things really well to people that might not be an expert in your field, and to be able to be honest and basically translate complex problems into easy to understand solutions for your client. Number three is deep technical skills. Now, people are coming to you as a freelancer because it's difficult for them to find people that specialize in your skill within their existing company or their immediate environment. So they're really coming to somebody with a specialty, and that person is you. So you need to develop a deep experience and obsession over some niche skill in an industry. And lastly is project management skills. So as I mentioned before, you're wearing all of the hats. So you need to make sure you need to interpret a problem and be able to manage that appropriately so that you're actually delivering an outcome within budget and you're effectively communicating throughout that entire process and you're not blowing out. So some of the projects might take a fixed price, and if you don't manage those effectively, you might not make many profits at all, or you may even run at a loss. I hope that didn't scare you too much. Next, I'm going to quickly talk on some of the benefits of freelancing. Number one, you get to do what you're passionate about. Now, if you're like me, I came from a construction background, and whilst I enjoyed what I was doing, I was constantly looking at the clock and I really didn't find a sense of passion in the work that I was doing. If you find the right skill, believe in what you're selling and you're confident in your own skills, and you have a sense of pride about running your own operations and owning your own freelance business, I think you're going to find a real sense of purpose and some real drive in the work you do. Two is the possibility to significantly increase your hourly rate or the amount of money that you're earning. As a freelancer, you can earn up to 60, 70, 100 plus USD dollars an hour if you're in the right niche and you're really confident in what you do and you have a solid social proof backing to prove to clients that they can trust you to solve their problems. Three is improved flexibility. Now, there's a big trend in digital nomad lifestyles going around on the internet right now, and freelancing does allow you to have a bit more control over the hours that you work and be able to possibly travel more if that's something you're interested in, or possibly spend more time with your family, or just control your day a little bit more and not be fixed into a 9 to 5 work schedule or something similar like that. And number four is be your own boss. If you've got a real drive for entrepreneurial activities and taking control of your own work pipeline and, how much you get paid and, you get to reap the rewards of the work that you do, you're going to find freelancing really good. Now, on the flip side of that, there are some cons to freelancing. One is the need for discipline and direction. Unlike a job, when you're a freelancer, nobody's telling you what to do. So you have to really take that ownership on yourself to steer the ship and figure out how to solve problems, but also the next step in your journey. So career progression is really up to you. Nobody's really going to tell you the next step in your freelancing journey. You have to look at the current job landscape, the opportunities, and really assess your own direction, where you're going to find work and how you're going to expand your operations. Number two is pressure. Now, what I've found and what's always really confused me is people tend to expect a whole lot more from freelancers than they do from their own employees, even if they're getting paid the exact same amount at the end of the day. And three is the possibility of a lower income, especially at the start of your career. When you're starting out as a freelancer, you have very little social proof and clients don't really trust you because you really haven't got anything to show them to prove that you know what you're doing. So you may have to work for much lower than usual hourly rates to get a foot in the door, get some quality feedback, build your experience, which you can then use to drive your hourly rate up further. Now, if you find that exciting and being a freelancer is something that's really interesting to you, next up is to find a pipeline of work or somewhere where you can actually find clients to do work for. There's a number of freelancing marketplaces out there. I started on Upwork, which I would highly recommend, but I know that there's other ones like Freelancer, Contra, and I know some people actually run really successful LinkedIn and X posts and build a portfolio and a following there and can actually get some really good quality leads. My recommendation would be to set up a profile on all of these platforms, because if you're going to fill one out, it's not going to be that much extra work to go ahead and fill all of them out. The next thing to do is to find a niche skill that genuinely interests you. And I know for me, this took a little bit of time. I tried a couple different things. I tried a little bit of e-commerce. I tried a few things before I found no-code building apps, which really excited me and interested me because I've always had a little bit of a mathematical brain and I love to solve problems. Some of the things that I know are really popular right now, but also things that there's definitely room to freelance in. Those could be no code, which is a little bit biased because that's what I'm doing, but also building anything with AI, design-based skills, whether that's web design or logo design or actual physical designs, branding, stuff like that, marketing skills. The list really goes on. If you want extra help on finding these skills, Reddit is a great place to go, but also actually going on these forums or job boards like Upwork and stuff like that, you can actually search existing jobs and you can see the budgets and the hourly rates that are getting paid for those jobs. So you can get a really good idea of what skills are really in demand right now. And if some of them interest you, that could be a good sense of direction to further learn more about that skill and start to practice it. If you have some previous experience and you're already well versed in the particular skill that you choose, you may be ready to jump straight into sending out job proposals and talking to clients. But if you're not an expert or you're not that confident in your skills at this stage, I'd highly recommend building 1, 2, 3 personal projects and getting some experience under your belt so that when you then go to talk to clients, you're not nervous, you don't feel like you're lying, and you're confident in yourself and your ability to be able to actually deliver solutions and generally just talk about your skill and what it is you do. Now, if you've got that sorted, I think you're ready to go ahead and actually fill out your profiles on these freelancing platforms. I'm going to talk about Upwork in particular here, but they're all fairly similar and the process is going to be pretty much the same no matter which freelancing profiles you're working on. Now, to start with profile picture, I would take a profile picture and me personally, I put a color effect in the background because that profile picture is what's going to show up on a lot of searches and you want it to kind of draw the eye. So I'd recommend taking a relatively professional profile picture. I wouldn't go too overboard with this, but just having a little bit of a color difference in the background or something that might draw the eye to your particular profile picture. Underneath that is your tagline, and this has a lot of importance, not just for quickly communicating to your clients exactly what it is you do and what your skill set is, but it also has a lot of meta tags importance, whereas that really controls where you show up in searches. So for me, for example, I work with bubble.io a lot. If I have bubble.io in my tagline, that means I'm going to rank a lot higher when people search for bubble.io. But if I also do a lot of work with Figma, for example, I should really make sure that all of the services that I specialize in should be clearly mentioned in that tagline so that you're going to show up in the searches when people are looking for someone with your skill set. Now, underneath that is your description. In my opinion, I would make sure that the first 2 lines of that description grab attention. And why I say that is because when a client actually goes to hire somebody on Upwork, what they see is they see your profile picture, your tagline, and the first 2 or 3 sentences of your description. So you really want to make sure these grab attention. And my recommendation would be do not use AI. I think AI was great 6 to 12 months ago. It helped you really clean things up and look professional, but now everybody's done it and it looks generic. And your main objective here is to stand out, because if there's 50 people applying to a job, you need to find all of the ways in which you're unique and different and maximize those so that a client's actually going to select you over 49 other people. Now, next up is a video. And I know Upwork allows you to add videos to your profile, and I cannot stress enough how important and how differentiating this can be. In my personal opinion, your video is by far the most important thing on your profile, because it gives you an opportunity to straight away show a client exactly who you are, how you communicate, and how you can solve their problems. So you usually get about 60 to 120 seconds, I think it might be. And in that time, that is the most powerful tool to differentiate yourself, because text can only go so far. You can only explain yourself so far with text. If they can get on there and see who you are, quickly see some of the case studies or the experience that you have, and understand how you communicate, it is going to go a mile in helping you win jobs. So I cannot stress that enough. Now, my initial video, I filmed in my bedroom. I got a half working green screen behind me and a pretty budget camera, and it didn't look amazing, but I would really do your best to try and maybe find somewhere in the library, or if you've got a quiet bedroom or somewhere where you can get a little bit of quiet space and a kind of neutral background, and smile and just explain yourself in a 60 to 90 second pitch. And I guarantee you, this will do you wonders in winning clients. Now, underneath that, and the final thing I'll talk about, is case studies and portfolio. Now, when you're just starting out, I would flood this with passion projects and any small bits of experience that you might have in the area. Honestly, I don't think people actually read these too much. They just take a 3 or 4 second look, and everyone loves things that are shiny. So if you can make it look nice, I guarantee you most people aren't going to read through it in too much detail. Those are my 5 steps on creating a winning profile on Upwork. You can actually search talent on Upwork. I'd find someone in your niche that's top rated, that has a significant amount of earnings and a high job success score, and see what they do. I wouldn't copy it word for word, but in terms of the way they've set up their profile, why would you reinvent the wheel when you can just copy someone else who's already got a winning formula working? So that would be my final ending tip for building an Upwork profile. Now, you've got a winning profile, which is awesome, except if you haven't got much experience, there's not going to be that many people that visit your profile. So you don't really want to rely on inbound leads, especially at that stage. You want to work on some outbound leads and actually sending out job proposals. Full disclaimer here, if you're just starting out, there's a good chance you may have to send 10, 20, 30 proposals, and you'll get rejected a lot of the time. And this ties into the resilience that I talked about earlier as a freelancer. I'm telling you right now, in my personal opinion, the start is the hardest part, because you haven't proven to yourself that this works, and it can really beat you down when you're sending out all these proposals. You're putting time and effort into setting up your profile, sending these proposals out, and you're just getting rejected and you're not getting anything back. And what I can stress here is you have to push through that. So keep trying. You might get lucky and get one in your first few proposals sent out, or you may have to send out 50 proposals before you get a client that wants to book a call in with you. But keep going and just keep working on it. Keep trying to get better. Some of the things that can help you stand out. First up is the first 2 sentences of your proposal. As I mentioned before, when you apply to a job, especially on Upwork, they send across your profile, which is your profile image, your tag, and then the first 2 sentences of the proposal that you sent. So you really need to grab attention and communicate who you are, how you can solve their problems in that first 2 sentences. Couple other things I would recommend is really trying to make your proposal specific to their problem. A lot of people use generic ChatGPT proposals, and they're not really specific. They don't answer the actual job post specifically enough. If you can do that, especially in your first 2 sentences, but then elaborate on it further in your proposal, you're going to have some more success. If you're really well suited to a job, I'd recommend recording a 2-minute Loom video so you can get across your communication skills, but you can also talk through to the client possibly some previous examples of when you've solved that problem, or talk them through quickly how you're going to solve that problem in a Loom video. So when the client is looking through your proposal and they see the first 2 taglines, but they also see the description description and then they see the Loom video, they're going to think that this guy or this girl has done really well in actually understanding the problem. They can see how you communicate, and it could really help you win a job if you're specific enough in that Loom video. If you see some success with those proposals, the next thing is going to be booking a discovery call or a sales call. Now, in my experience, successful sales calls that I've run do follow a general structure, although I would say once you get confident enough, you really don't need to look at any documents or follow any structure on these sales calls to a degree. It just becomes like second nature and you do it without even thinking about it. But in my experience, this is typically how most of the sales calls go. The first 2 minutes roughly are just an intro. So you'll log into the Google Meet or wherever it is, and you'll exchange some quick hellos, and you might want to quickly just ask some questions about how their day's going, whereabouts they're dialing in from, and just a little bit of a get to know each other for that first 2 minutes. After that 2-minute intro, my next stage is usually 5 to 10 minutes of letting the client talk about their problem in as much detail as possible. And this is actually where I see a lot of freelancers go wrong. Some freelancers tend to jump into talking about themselves and their own experience because they're really desperately trying to show the client that they have all this social proof. But what you're actually doing is you're not allowing the client to vent their problem, and they don't feel like you can solve their problem because you haven't even let them explain it yet. And how can you possibly understand something when you don't know what it is? So what I would recommend is really just shutting your mouth for that 5 to 10 minutes and letting the client really go in depth about what their problem is and show you around. Now, I tend to ask a couple probing questions in this phase if I see anything in there which I actually know about. And what that does is it shows the client that you're actually following what they're talking about and that you actually understand what's happening. I keep it brief, but yeah, I really allow that phase to happen so that you can then transition into talking about their specific pain points and providing solutions. So once that 5-10 minutes is sorted, there's another 5-10 minutes where it then goes on to you as a freelancer to talk about the problems that you saw when they were talking about their problems. And then this is where you can also throw in some previous experience that might be relevant to their project and also talk about yourself a bit more. They might be interested about who you are, where you're from, how you learned your skills, and prior experience really. What I've mentioned in some of my other previous videos is that all the client really cares about at the end of the day is trust. They just want their problem solved. They really don't care about much else. And everything you do is really just adding to your trust score essentially. And they're probably going to hire the person with the highest trust score. That's how I think about this. So it's really about quickly talking about yourself, but then actually talking about the problem and explaining how you're going to solve it. And if you do that well enough, the client's going to be like, yep, this person knows what they're doing. They've seen this problem before. They know how to solve it and they can get it done quickly. Let's give the job to them. And that's typically how that works. Once you've done that, last 3 to 5 minutes is really about next steps. So you really need to outline where do we go from here. If we were to continue or to proceed, whether that's them sending over a scope of works document or you providing that, or whether that's scheduling another call to go through something in more detail or whatever it is, you really want to scope out those steps in that phase. What I would say here is if you can get some sort of financial investment from the client after this call, that's going to make sure that they actually invested in this project. Because what can happen is if you take too long to get that financial investment, clients can change their mind or they get bored or all sorts of things can happen. Basically, you want to make sure that they're serious in this project so that they're not wasting your time. So if you can get some sort of deposit, or if it's a small job, if you can get that contract credit on Upwork at the end of that call, that's really great because then the client's invested and you can actually get to work as soon as possible. Now, once the call is over, I'd also recommend writing down some quick notes. And the reason for that is some calls you might get on and you might go, that went amazing. This client was great. They seemed understanding. The budget was there, A+ client. And you might get on some calls and some of the clients might be horrible. They don't speak to you very nicely. They haven't got a good attitude. They don't understand what's happening. And we typically call those C- clients. And maybe their budget is not realistic or not in your range. So I'd really recommend writing that down so that if that client tends to follow you back up, possibly in a month or two, and you might be really busy with work or something, and you say that they're a C- client, you might just let that one walk because painful clients can really be damaging to your freelancing career and you tend to want to avoid those people at all costs. Once you actually land a project, first off, congratulations, because I think landing your first project is actually the hardest thing in starting freelancing out of everything. So if you manage to land your first project, congratulations, and you've successfully made it past a phase that a lot of people drop out in. But there's a lot more to do to actually be able to manage profitable projects. So the first thing is scoping, and something that people in their early days in freelancing tend tend to get pretty wrong, I know I definitely did, is not having a clear scope of works document in place. Now, what do I mean by that? If the terms of the job and what you're actually completing in this fixed price contract are not laid out clearly, what you can find happen is clients, you think you finished the project, you send it back over to a client, and then this is missing, this should be there, this should be there, this should be there. And you may have never discussed that, but there's no clear documentation saying what is and isn't in this project. And so there's not really any grounds for you to negotiate here, because you might have discussed or started this project 3 months ago and everyone's forgotten what's actually involved in this price. So developing a clear scope of works document, which is essentially what is going to be completed for what price, is pretty essential. Next up is a project management tool. Now, when I first started, I was running everything out of the Upwork chat and WhatsApp, which is cool, but if you talk about something 2 weeks later, it's pretty hard to find it. So I would recommend looking at things like Slack, Trello, and Asana, which are basic project management tools that are going to, or maybe Monday.com as well if you need a CRM, but looking into some project management tools that are going to make your life a whole lot easier, especially when you're managing multiple projects. Another quick tip is hourly first fixed price contracts. As a beginner, I'd highly recommend shooting for hourly wherever possible, because there's less that can go wrong and you can make sure that you're getting paid for what you're doing. Now, it may be harder to win those at the start and you might have to get some fixed price jobs, and I don't think that's the end of the world because you learn some really valuable skills there. But hourly contracts as a beginner, typically less risky, and I think you'll learn skills and get paid a little bit more if you can land those hourly contracts. Another tip when quoting fixed price projects is talking about prices. Now, what I've found is when you talk to a client, talking about dollar figures tends to scare them no matter what the dollar figure is. So I always talk in terms of hours. And so let's say, for example, your hourly rate is $20 an hour and you want to justify that a project is $400. Instead of saying that it's going to be $400 to complete this, I estimate this is going to take 20 hours. And then if they want the price, then I go, my hourly rate's $20, so that it would be $400. But then they understand the methodology and how you actually arrived at that price. And they can't really argue with your time and your hourly rate the same way that they can argue with just a fixed price ambiguous number. So that's what I would recommend if you have to justify price. And that way you can avoid haggling to a degree, because for them to say, can you do it less? They're really undermining your hourly rate, which doesn't happen as often as just throwing out ambiguous numbers. The last two things are, one, to keep your communication transparent. I've found that most of the issues in these contracts come when there's a misinterpretation through communication. That's where a lot of arguments and issues in the tech space come out of, or just in freelancing in general. So you really want to try and keep your communication as clear as possible. And the last thing is being firm. So clients can tell when you're a bit of a pushover, and it's a really fine line here because you don't want to be too harsh, especially in the early days, because you're trying to make the client happy and get good reviews. And you may have to go a bit above and beyond sometimes, but at the same time, there does need to be a boundary there. You can't let the client push you around forever on a fixed price project, because they're going to think you're a bit of a pushover and they're going to really drive you really hard. And at the start, on your first couple projects, that definitely happened to me, and I don't think it's the end of the world because you learn some really valuable skills there, even if you're not getting paid too much. But at some point, you really need to start to draw a firm line and basically say, look, we've reached a boundary here. This was not in scope, or whatever the boundary is. We're going to have to charge a variation or do something about this. The final step is actually further developing your profile and your hourly rate and growing to that 6-figure income through a freelancing channel. The first thing here, which will help you grow to that level, is the importance of social proof and reviews. So the more social proof and the more reviews you have, the more you can support and justify your increased hourly rate, and the more clients are going to trust you, which means the more they're going to pay you. So really, it all comes down to social proof and also experience, which will happen naturally as you get more and more projects under your belt. But that's what's going to help you drive up your hourly rate and the amount that you earn through a platform like Upwork. Now, one of the questions I get a lot is, how do you know when to increase your rate? And my answer to that is when you get too busy. So if your hourly rate is $20 an hour and you're doing your max or close to your maximum, let's say that's 40 hours a week, then I would recommend updating your Upwork profile to have maybe $25 or $30 an hour, and then get a new job at that rate if people are willing to pay it. And that's how you naturally progress your hourly rate up and up. So if you're pretty slow on the work and there's not much coming in, that might be a sign to drop your hourly rate. But if you're super busy, that might be a sign to up your hourly rate. Another step I would take if you've gotten off the ground and your freelance profile is developing is to get across into all those different channels, but also possibly make a personal website and see if you can't start to grow a little bit of traffic there, because it decreases the risk of your reliance on one platform. And what actually happened to my brother, who had 200K through Upwork and 200 plus or some crazy number of projects, he actually got banned for sending his personal calendar link through the chat too many times. I'm not sure if people are experienced with that, but that's a big no-no on these freelancing platforms. And so what that did is it actually cut out a really popular source of leads for him. And he had to migrate over to building a website and getting natural traffic through there, which is a little bit harder. So instead of waiting for that abrupt change, should anything ever happen to some of these freelancing platforms, I would prematurely start to work on building that as you develop, and building a website, building a LinkedIn and following, and all those kind of things to diversify your lead base. Essentially. The last tip here is to, again, stay resilient and don't give up. You may have all sorts of issues and problems that jump in the way, and it may make you feel like possibly quitting freelancing. It can get like that sometimes. And so what I would say is you really have to not give up, sleep on it, and really try to work on getting better, building more solid processes, building more solid scope of works documents, identifying painful clients earlier, and really doing your best to avoid those situations, because they do happen and you probably will experience them as you develop and grow. But I think the more you do this, the better you get at recognizing what causes those kind of things, and the more you can input things in place to mitigate those risks and hopefully prevent them from happening. Congratulations. If you're at this point of the video, or you're at this stage in your life, you've probably gotten through the challenges of building a freelancing profile, and you probably have a pretty successful freelancing career. And so one of the questions you may have is, where do you go from here? And you've really got a number of pathways open to you. One is you can just stay on the freelancing path. You're probably charging a fairly high hourly rate. You're probably enjoying the flexibility of working on your own terms, and you're probably really experienced in your niche. So you're probably pretty comfortably handling the work that comes your way. And you probably got a lot of people looking to work with you, so you can filter out all the annoying and bad clients that just give you the ick really when you jump on that first sales call. If you want to grow your operations further, you could look into possibly hiring some extra people to help you deliver work. Now, this does come with a lot of other challenges, and that model is typically what's called the agency model, which is what I've actually jumped into, and I'll be talking more about that in a separate series. But that is a possible avenue for further growth if that's something that you're looking to do. I think the freelancing pathway is extremely rewarding. There's a lot of challenges, and it really requires resilience to make your way through the process. But I think when you get to the end of it, and you'll have moments as you go through where you achieve certain things, like your first sales call, your first contract, completing your first contract, earning your first dollar through Upwork. There's all these little milestones that really make you feel proud of yourself for being able to achieve these things completely on your own, and being able to do something that you're passionate about that's risky, but I think is really rewarding if you can get it right and really invest yourself into the process. I honestly wish you all the best, and I want to hear about each and every one of your journeys through this freelancing. And that's why I've created a completely free school community called the No Code Builders Hub, which is for anyone that's interested in freelancing, agency management, no code, and AI, to go and be able to access the resources, whether that's tips and tricks, whether that's support through a community, and all those kind of things, completely free. There's weekly Q&As and a lot of those kind of things to help you get through those different difficult stages as a freelancer. In addition to that, I've got a bunch of different materials on my YouTube channel talking through all of the things that I mentioned before. So if any of this interests you, feel free to subscribe there and take a look at some of my other videos. I really appreciate you watching. I hope you found some of the contents in this video helpful, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next one. Thanks.